Hello, my name is Gary Scudder. I'm a professor here in the Corps. Today I'm ably assisted by the excellent Eric Schonstrom, who has now filmed two Corps talks and is going to probably go on to Hollywood. We're going to lose him soon. Today I want to talk about a film that I use in its entirety in Corps 110, Concepts of the Self, and one that I use a piece of in Corps 270, Heroines and Heroes. It's a film that I love. It's Memento, the 2000 film by Christopher Nolan that's based on a short story by his younger brother, Jonathan. And the students know Christopher Nolan because he directed the Batman trilogy before he sold out. I really like the Batman trilogy, so I'm not going to be too harsh on it, but whenever I see it, all I can think of is, because you're filming this, you're no longer making films like Memento. So this sort of bothers me. Memento, I think, is one of the extraordinary films of the last 20 years, and proof positive, once again, that the Academy Awards are a joke, because this is by far the most intelligent movie that came out that particular year. So I always make use of this, and I think it goes very well. And why do I show it to them? Well, one, because it's a great film and a difficult film, and I'm a big believer in torturing them by making them actually watch really hard films that ask really tough questions. I remember the first time I showed this, there's a very lovely student in the class who had this look on her face of just bereavement, who said, "Is there a website I can go to that will explain this film to me?" And I said, "Well, actually, there are many websites that will try to explain this film to you." For those of you who don't know, and if you don't know, shame on you, this is a film starring Guy Pearce as Leonard, Carrie-Anne Moss as Natalie, Joe Pantoliano as Teddy. And it's based about Leonard, who is a character who cannot make new memories. The classic sort of brain injury wherein he can remember everything up to the injury but cannot make new memories, so he tends to live in 5-minute little blocks. And it opens up with him trying to solve the mystery of the murder of his wife, and explaining how the process he works. And keep in mind that literally within 5 minutes he will have forgotten anything he ever knew. So his entire life is making notes to himself, which eventually he turns into tattoos. So all across his body are these sort of freaky tattoos with like fact 1, fact 2, fact 3 that he uses to try to track down his killer. And I will not go through all of the permutations of the film. Suffice it to say, it's very, very complicated. And in the end, you aren't really quite certain what happened. And it's filmed in a remarkably unique way, in that it is interspersed color scenes and black and white scenes. And the color scenes are actually going essentially backwards in time, and the black and white scenes are going forward in time. So you sort of like color scene, black and white scene, color scene, black and white scene, and eventually they kind of meet in the middle and tell you what happens. And you sort of figure out what his deal is. Nobody is what you think they are. It's sort of a classic, remarkably stylish film noir, including some film noir over-voicing. It's remarkably well done. And it really messes with the students. And even as something as simple as, when I get done, I'll say, okay, let's think of all the different things that we can come up with that might explain Leonard's wife, who's just seen in flashback. Georgia Fox is his wife. And inevitably they come up with literally 8 different things that might explain his wife. From she was in fact raped and murdered to she never really existed. And Christopher Nolan does not mind throwing out some lovely red herrings to mess with people. Like there's this great flashback scene he has at the end. And again, keep in mind he can't make new memories, so all his flashbacks have to go back to before his injury, when these robbers entered his house. And there's a great memory of him sitting there with his wife cuddled up next to him, and you see this tattoo across his chest which says, "John G. raped and murdered my wife." And you think, wait a minute, then why is your wife cuddled up next to you? I don't understand. And in the end, I guess a strange comparison would be to Othello. If Iago would have ever told us what the hell was going on, we would not find him nearly as fascinating. Okay, now how do I use this? Well, I have the students write a 5-page paper on it, and they have to use Linden or Hawke or Freeland to try to analyze this film. And with everything, I don't necessarily even care what answer they come up with. I'm not looking for a correct answer. And I don't know if there is a correct answer. And if there is a correct answer, I don't care what the correct answer is. What matters is, have you used the material from the class to try to make sense of this story. And have you done this in a very scientifically detailed way, where you actually also cited some of the articles? Because I think you can make use of Linden, obviously, when Linden talks about perception and memory and false memories, and for that matter, brain injuries. And the brain injury thing is fascinating. The students sort of latch on to very early on. With Hawk, you can get into memory, you can get into conditioning, also perception. You can also get into Freeland, clearly, when she talks about narrative and identity. One of the most interesting things I think you can do with it, though, is forget the question of brain, the maybe potential of the brain injury, or the notion of whether or not he actually had a wife or not. There's also the sense of, what about just meaning? Because one thing that you can draw from this film is this notion that, maybe none of this ever happened. And this is his way of constructing meaning out of his life. Because if you're just living in 5-minute blocks for the rest of all time and cannot make new memories, would your life have any meaning or purpose at all? So by constructing a mystery which cannot be solved, which the Joe Pantoliano character essentially hints at, you have now given yourself a meaning and a purpose, so you can actually take it to this much bigger existential examination of the meaning of life. It always works. The students love it. I also use it, obviously, in Core 130, which is the summer. Now, I've also started using it in Core 270, Heroines and Heroes. Because as part of that, we talk about the concept of narratology. How do you film and tell a story? And I show a little snippet of it. And the snippet I show is just like 3 interrelated scenes. One is a color scene which shows Leonard in Natalie's apartment, and she walks in and she's obviously been punched in the face, and she's telling him this story about, oh my good God, this guy named Dodd punched me and this is all your fault. And then you go to a black and white scene, which is Leonard, keep in mind this is going in a completely different direction temporally, talking about, he looks at his arm and there's a tattoo that says, don't answer the phone, and the phone rings. And he slams the phone down. But then you go to a scene, again, of Natalie and Leonard, wherein she comes in and just, you see a remarkably different side of Natalie, and she just messes with him and yells at him and is profane and pharisaical as hell until she inspires him to punch her. And keep in mind that the color scenes are going backwards in time. So what you're doing is essentially explaining what has just happened. And you realize that the previous scene, which is going backwards in time, wherein you think that she's explaining how Dodd punched her, Leonard actually punched her. And it's her way of sort of messing with him. I show it because in the Barry book in Core 270, they talk about narratology and a big discussion about the difference between story and plot. And I can't think of a better explanation of the difference between story and plot than that. And the fact that by taking this approach, he is, that is Christopher Nolan, is giving you a sense of Leonard's world. Because you open every scene not really knowing what the hell just happened, because that's how Leonard starts every 5-minute section of his life. So it works brilliantly in 110. The students love it in 270. I could not promote this more strongly, even though I do not actually know Christopher Nolan. If anyone would like to talk about the use of this, I'd be more than happy to. So that's it, and thank you very much.